triptych of exhibitions, Repairing the Present, REWORLD, REWILD, RETOOL, is a transnational project that reflects on the work of 21 artist residencies carried out in the framework of S+T+ARTS regional centers. It's an initiative of the European Commission to foster collaborations between science, technology, and the arts. Repairing the Present has been the overarching theme of these residencies, and the exhibitions respond to this theme by emphasizing a certain number of tensions. Repairing the present is a very, very particular trope. What is it really that we are repairing? We are in a time of repair, but exactly how is this repair, this operation of fixing, to be carried out? Repairing implies a certain amount of urgency and immediacy. Something is broken, it needs to be fixed, repaired, etc. But it also implicates the imagination, implicates creativity. This, to the most radical extent, the radical creativity that is needed for a completely unforeseen scenario. And that unforeseenness, that novelty, is the novelty of the present. It's here and now, our current confusion, disorientation, determination, will to improve the conditions of preservation of life on Earth. When we approached this idea of the present, it was not just, let's say, the present time, what's happening today on our planet specifically, and its surroundings, but it is also the sense of presentness itself. It's the dimension of time that we call the present. After the pandemic, we have seen, under a huge amount of stress, presentness and the present time have become problematic. It is difficult to be in the present, it's difficult to be present. And lastly, presentness is also togetherness. Presence is co-presence. Identifying these dimensions was the first part of the work. And then this threefold notion of rewording, rewilding, and retooling came as a very good thread to connect these three shows. The exhibition at Maxi is called REWILD because the site allowed for a, let's say, a staging of a certain impulse to decolonize nature, to decolonize our relations with nature, and to let go of the hegemonic attitudes that humans have had over any other non-human agent for centuries. The idea behind REWILD is not simply a concept. It emerges from the articulation of all these works. Many of the artists in residency in the Repairing the Present context were working on resetting, equalizing the relations with non-human agents. And pretty much in every work in this exhibition, there is a non-human agency at work, presently at work. The concept was not just to celebrate or to promote a certain notion of return or reconnection with nature. The idea was to explore ways in which we can find new modes of wilding and rewilding, reintroducing what we call feral patterns in everything, not just what is natural as opposed to non-natural or artificial or human, but in everything, everything considered as part of the same system, which is the system of systems we call Earth. The exhibition was presented this way, with no enclosures, no firm divisions, in a very, very wide space, which is the one you see here in Extra Maxi. The first result was the performance that was presented on the opening night, a piece by Lew O'Neill under the title Cursed, which is the title of his project and many manifestations of this sound project. And it featured Alicia Thomas and vocal performers Mari Recchio Gailey and Dylan Kerr. It was an outdoor sound environment. It presented this amazing circle of speakers, and visitors were encouraged to be inside the circle, to be in the center of sound. Lew O'Neill is an artist working with sound, with spatialization, with explorations of multiple types of space, multiple types of geological or architectural containers or cavities in which sound takes place and increases knowledge, increases awareness, and this awareness is itself ecological. As we moved into the show, we encountered a very mysterious container with water and minerals. There are some mineral sticks, and this is a work that actually has repeated in all three exhibitions, REWORLD in Milan, REWILD here in Rome, and RETOOL in Karlsruhe. It is a manifestation of a piece by Studio Lapas Unger and Johannes Meer, which is an exploration of hydrology and geology, particularly in the Berlin region. The water that you can drink at the entrance of REWILD has a mineralization thanks to these mineral sticks that resembles very greatly that of Berlin tap water. The joke, but also the enigma that we wanted to throw in this preliminary moment to seeing the show was to drink this water as a drinkable artwork, as an experience of geology through taste, and as an experience of research also through our bodies. It is a moment in which, before we see the exhibition and we go into all these ideas and all these materials, we reconnect with our body, we make some sort of recall. Moving forward and already entering the space, one is surprised by this massive structure that you see behind me, which is a massive structure, also it's a very, very incredibly light structure by artist and xenologist Adriana Knuff. The work of Adriana Knuff explores multiple queer futurities and post-human scenarios. It is a work that takes particular interest in outer space and the possibilities of queer development and trans explorations of outer space. There is an idea of decolonizing outer space, decolonizing space missions. Here in the Moon Shadow project that you see, it takes the form of a satellite. It's a handmade, yet quasi-operational satellite. It functions through radio waves, through normal satellite technology. That's a very serious undertaking of airspace technology in that sense. And it's made with this particular type of fabric that is known as a solar sail. It is a sail for outer space explorations that does not require wind, but actually pushes its structure thanks to photons, thanks to light. The idea in Adriana Knuff's project is to explore these possibilities and to materialize the dreams of transgender people and queer people to take part in the explorations of other planets, also knowing that there is a great component in speculative science fiction, and particularly queer speculative science fiction, of connection between queer destinies and extraterrestrial destinies. This is a very, very good example of how much these radical artistic explorations can also bring different agendas into scientific programs that are currently driven by strictly militaristic, extractive, business-minded agendas. As we turn through the documentation, we see hybrids of lichen and other types of fossils. We see science fiction books, and we can gaze at another work in proximity, which is what we understand as a mathematical formula or an algorithm. This is the work of Olga Kiseleva in collaboration with Liu Bauer. This work explores the various types of navigations that citizens can perform in an urban environment based on, let's say, on the one hand, the greenest paths they could take from one point to another, meaning the paths in which there are more elements of vegetation, nature, trees, parks. And on the other hand, the most efficient trip, the shortest trip to get where they want to go. From these two components, this equation is built, which tries to encode what we may call a green index. This index will allow to understand the levels of predictability of certain green paths against more efficient paths, the levels of preference or frequency of citizens traveling through greener paths, choosing the slowest and better path for themselves. But also in these choices of navigation, we could also see which areas of the city have the greatest emotional value for citizens to go through them and to experience them as a core aspect of their urban living. Next to this work, we see a different exploration of the wild, and particularly of wild species that have these interactions with humans. Sometimes they are asymmetrical, sometimes they are unequal, sometimes they are unjust. And in particular, these two artists, Philip van Dingenen and David Shongo, explored a very ancient animal sport in Flanders. It's called Suskewiet. This activity consists of listening to bird songs and creating a chart of these bird songs that is inscribed on these sticks that act like scores for this bird music. There was an intention of questioning and redefining the terms of this animal-human relationship in its local site. There was also a post and anti-colonial take in the collaboration between David Shongo and Philip van Dingenen. And the piece with its whole technology, however ancient technology of craft bird cages and sticks, was brought to Congo and was re-experienced by local people in Lumumbashi, with David Shongo is based. The result of this exploration of the Suskewiet tradition in Flanders was also a sound work that we can experience in the gallery, alongside this documentation and a full map of these visions, of these, of all the aspects of this culture, and how much we can, let's say, reshuffle its components. So it brings a different relation with nature, and it charts what has been so far the culture around these animal-human relationships. We can see, not far from this piece, a set of sculptures. They are handcrafted sculptures in glass, and they are a second manifestation of the project by Studio La Page Unger and Johannes Meyer we mentioned before. So these bodies of water here take the form of sculptures that replicate the particular outlines, the shapes, and the depths of waterbeds in the areas where water is sourced for the city of Berlin to use. These sculptures, as you can see, also take the form of containers, of organic containers. They are somehow biomorphic, and one could see them as stomachs, as organs in water. There is a really violent contrast between these bodies of water and the heaps of garbage that the artist Susie Gucci has collected, organized, tracked down, assembled together in this installation. Her project, Trace Waste, is a mapping project, is some sort of cultural anthropology. It is also a very abysmal existential investigation on the fate of our objects. We seem to think that we have a material culture. However, we are constantly disposing of things that have value. We are constantly polluting the environment with these goods that don't have a purpose anymore, even though they're perfectly functional. So the artist Susie Gucci was particularly interested in textiles and plastics, in objects that come from either of these two forms of manufacturing. She has used advanced IoT technology to track down some of these container trucks carrying garbage out of cities like Rome. Particularly in Rome, this is a very serious problem. There is waste out of control in some areas, and this has become part of the city's identity. For an artist in residency here, Susie Gucci is originally from Austria and now she's based in Rome. This was quite striking. So the tracking activity brought up a number of maps, brought up very strange paths of navigation of these vehicles, but also gave an overwhelming sense of how complex these movements of trash, of waste and useless material are. The installation is interactive in the sense that all this information mapping has to be explored by the viewer. You sort of need to engage with the screen and explore this data yourself. You can also comfortably sit down and reflect, so contemplate this space in which you are, which has, nevertheless been made out of actual waste. So as we move to the end of the room, we see the work of Penelope Kane. This project has a general title, one and the care of many, it addresses a particular entity that is particularly inspiring for this artist. She posits that this entity, which we call lichen, and which is a multi-species organism, is a very, very plural and collective being, she firmly believes that it contains a model for collaboration between species, for some sort of different constituency of agencies in nature. She has explored it using advanced technology, imaging technology, so we can see the structure of lichen in 3D in one of the video presentations. We can also see the patterns, how they are developed visually and graphically, and how she tries to learn from its proliferation patterns. The work of Penelope Kane around lichen comprises video works, sculptures, graphic works, mural installations, the idea of rewilding and of encouraging lichen to take back certain spaces that are completely asepticized in our urban environments is key to this project. In a very, very familiar way, once we leave this space, we should come across the last work in the exhibition, which is an active environment, an active culture of bacteria. It is the work by Samira Benini Alawat. Samira has, let's say, called upon this other organism, in this case a bacteria, to develop a prototype for alternative forms of public lighting. Originally, Samira Benini is a street artist. She knows very well urban spaces and what it is to work artistically outdoors in urban spaces. And at some point, she became very curious about the way we could create collaborations with microorganism communities in urban spaces. The prototype that goes under the title Geolum, which is geolight in Catalan, is based on the use of the soil as the space in which these bacteria, called Geobacter, are operating constantly. Geobacter is a particular type of bacteria that is very, very efficient both in bioremediation of contaminated soil and the production, the steady production of clean energy, of electricity. Inside this sculpture, you can, well, imagine, it's impossible to see them, but you can imagine them, it is true that there is a culture of Geobacter, and every day they produce the electricity that is sufficient to light this work, to provide this work with power. The work can be turned on and off by visitors as they move through the exhibition, as you can see right now. So as you see, it is not only an exhibition of science, technology and art collaboration. It is not an exhibition of simple formulas and ideas and prototypes. On the contrary, it is a very, very physical show, and I'm very happy to see that it strikes you by its materiality and by its presence. As soon as you come in, the exhibition tries to emphasize the importance of being present, also by its very display, and also the importance of seeing the exhibition and being here, building that awareness of this type of space, what is it that museums and exhibition spaces can provide for the increase and improvement of our knowledge. These projects are incredibly generous, and it is important to keep in mind that none of them were fully finished when we undertook the installation of the exhibition. All of them are more or less still in progress. These investigations are difficult, they are innovative, they are complex because of the number of people they engage, and they have multiple layers that are very technical. Sometimes they are deeply immersed in citizen life, in society. Sometimes they are radically imaginative. Sometimes they imply also a very, very personal, poetic. And I think this is the magic of such collaborations. They bring all these layers together and they inspire further and further cooperation, further and further co-creation.